Ngahuia is a lens-based artist who works with photography and video. Her practice draws out the political and cultural complexities of the specific places she works in. Her work on the economic development of the Whangarei Harbour and its impact on mana whenua was awarded a Vice-Chancellor's Award for Best Thesis in 2024. Nau mai, e hene.
Ngā rangatira mā tēnā koutou. E pare ana ngā tai o mihi ki hungi a koutou, te hunga kua huhui mai nei. Nō te tai tokirewa hau ko Ngahuia Harrison taku ingoa. Kia ora, it's lovely to be with you all this evening. I am currently one of the Te Tomokanga postdoctoral fellows in the Faculty of Arts and Education, and I'm based in Humanities. But my own studies were completed at Elam School of Fine Arts here at the University of Auckland. So my research is always creative-led. I use research methods from the humanities, from the social sciences, but ultimately I answer research questions through art making. A teacher at Elam once explained to me that he didn't make art for art's sake alone, believing that it had something to do with his Māoritanga, that his practice had to sit within a wider set of responsibilities. And this was the first thing that someone said to me at art school that really made sense. Now, I won't say how far into the degree I was at that point, but I understood this idea that art has a really important purpose. Information is continually produced in places such as this, really important and tested research. There is evidence and solutions about issues such as climate change, or on the benefits of a te tiriti-led Aotearoa for all New Zealanders, if only information alone solved our problems. Well, art can step in here, approaching research and findings from a different perspective, creating windows onto the many solutions that are created here. And I feel very lucky to share the lectern tonight with Deirdre, and Ngā Rino couldn't be here. And I particularly wanted to mihi to Jonathan, who reaffirmed these ideas about art to me when I was lucky enough to have him as a supervisor at Elam. So the question then becomes for me, in my own work, some of which you've seen on the screen, what do the materials collated, information created, or knowledges produced in places like this, what do they look like, sound like, how do they affect, and how are they affected by the people living in the places that I research? A simple way I do this is that I use cameras. I use video cameras, still cameras, digital, analog. I'm still sometimes in the dark room, but I even use the camera on my phone. I spend a lot of time on sites, for me specifically in Te Tai Tukero. My camera and I spend time in places in Northland. We also go into the archives, we're at Hui, and interviews with project participants. And all of this gathering of materials, recording footage, taking photos, this informs the research methods as well as the final work. One such project that you've seen on the screen was called Coastal Cannibals. And in this project, I looked at how heavy industry on the Whangarei Harbour reshaped the harbour and the communities who have lived around it for generations. I wanted to show what it looks like on the ground, in particular the contradictions mana whenua live with after being pushed into industrial labour in order to put food on the table, at the same time as those industries damage the harbour that once fed everyone. We talk about this as enclosure in theory, but this project showed what it looked like in practice. When this work was first shown at the opening at Auckland Art Gallery, my cousin, who lives on the papakainga nearest to the Marsden Point oil refinery and Northcourt, she took total ownership of this work. She stood beside it and she let random members of the public know, this is the, insert swear word, that we have to live beside. This is what we have to deal with. And at that point, I knew that the work was doing its job. In a recent body of work, Te Kupenga, the Net, the focus was on the long relationship between Ngātiwai and the tohora, the whale. I was interested in this often talked about concept, kaitiakitanga, and what this actually looks like to the people who practice kaitiakitanga. The idea was that, although often considered as environmental protection, kaitiakitanga is a concept at odds with Western ideas of conservation or protection that seek to separate nature from humans and human activity. And what I wanted the work to show is that for us, environmental care is entangled with livelihood. And this means it has also changed under capitalism. Our story with whales is tied to migration, ecosystem knowledge, and economy. Ngātiwai has been heavily involved in whale protection following the work of Papahori Parata. We were also directly involved in the whaling industry with 2 whaling stations in our rohe, where our knowledge of migration paths and whale behaviours helped us, continuing, though, a legacy of sustenance dependent on the sea. Like our Uncle Iri, who was in the last image, who features in the documentary work and lives on the Waikato River near the Whangamumu whaling station, which is owned and operated by his great-great-grandfather, the only station in the world to catch whales with nets. His grandfather was the last whaler in his line, after which the family, including Uncle Iri's father and my nan, turned to their other primary business at Waikato, which was boat building. And today, Uncle Iri still lives at Waikato, where he operates his oyster farm, with a level of care and attunement that can only come from being reliant upon your waterways to live. Across these projects, the finished artworks are made public so people can recognise their ideas, their politics, their history. Art's ability lies in its translation of ideas to a broader audience, how to coexist with each other and the taiao, or reflecting histories embedded in the places we live, and hopefully even creating small ruptures in our usual habits of seeing, habits of ingesting information, a moment where a familiar feeling might suddenly be languaged and therefore spoken, where alternative futures or solutions considered possible. Nō reira, tēnā koutou katoa.